Hello, 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 and welcome to the Cloud English Podcast. My name is Luke. It is November 15th, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2018. And today, we are going to be talking about advanced English vocabulary. Now, what is advanced English vocabulary? That's a tricky question. I think we need to go through this together to try to understand first, what is advanced English vocabulary? Second, how can we learn it? And of course, we need to do real examples, look at tools, look at methods, practicing, all of that good, juicy stuff. That is what we will be doing today. So, welcome. It's great to have you. I hope you're looking forward to it. This is going to be a very focused episode of the Cloud English Podcast, and I hope that you get a lot out of it. If you do, I would appreciate, sincerely, if you could hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already. It's a very small thing that you can do, a little boink, and yet it makes a gigantic difference for the podcast, for the channel. It really helps out, and it's free. It's free to do. So I would sincerely appreciate that. You can grab a free course in the links in the description. You can join the Discord for free. You can listen, if you would prefer, on any podcast platform. Just search Cloud English Podcast on any podcasting platform. You can watch live every Friday, and that's about it. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. I hope you're looking forward to it. See, we have some people joining live, so that's great too. You'll be here along for the journey. Lina, hello and welcome. Good to have you. Good to see you here. Car, hello. Car, is that right? Hello. Welcome. Okay, so today we're going to focus on vocabulary, and the first question we're going to think about out loud is what it means when we hear advanced vocabulary versus basic vocabulary, because I think the line is blurry. When you're learning, you tend to learn, even for a simple word that you may know, you tend to know the familiar, the easy, in a particular context, in a specific sentence, in a conversation, right? You hear this word, you know this word, you've learned this word, but you only know it here, in this situation, used in this way, in this form. But what advanced really means is not a big word versus a little word. What advanced really means, in my opinion, is to understand words in depth, which means to understand not just one meaning, but the meanings. What are all of the meanings of this word? And all of the ways that this word can be used. All of the different connotations that the word may have. A connotation is the feeling that a word has when you say it, right? All of this is much more difficult than just, oh yes, I know this word and I know one way to use it. So I want to get you out of this mindset of thinking there are these two buckets of words, advanced words and simple words, and that's it. It's not that simple. It's really not. Now, there are, of course, as we've talked about with jargon, words that are, let's say, specialized for specific things, technical words, words for accounting, words for technology, words for healthcare, very advanced technical words, right? But in those cases, only a few people actually need to know them, ever. Not always. Now, there are some words which we could call, I guess we have to call them advanced, but I want to call them something else. There are words that people just don't use that often, which maybe have simpler versions, right? And we may use a more advanced word because we want to show that we know that word, or because it gives a different flavor, it has a different connotation, or because maybe it feels like it fits better in a given situation, or because we're writing something and we want to be extremely articulate, right? There are all kinds of reasons to use all kinds of words. But, don't think of it like, oh, if I use advanced vocabulary, I shouldn't use simple vocabulary. If I use simple vocabulary, I shouldn't be trying to use advanced vocabulary. Words are all just building blocks for you to put together what you mean, right? You have some ideas in your head, and you're trying to put it together so that when other people hear what you say or read what you write, they go, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so there's another layer of difficulty, which is, well, what is your audience, right? I might not use the word echelon, for example, in a live stream, in a podcast, when I'm talking to English learners, right? Or, I don't know, pusillanimous or something like that. I know a lot of big words. Well, I don't know how many a lot means, but when I read books or I read philosophy and I read words that are long and uncommon, let's say long uncommon words or not so common words, I generally understand a lot of them, but I often don't use those in daily situations. I definitely don't use them when I'm speaking to non-native English learners because I'm thinking of the audience. I want people to understand me. I might use some of those words, or at least more of those words, if I'm writing something to a particular audience who I think will know most of those words, for example. So, don't lose hope with all of this. I'm just trying to say this is not simple. And the answer is to jump in and swim around and just learn and enjoy the process and try and keep your mind open and have a positive attitude and don't be too fixed in your mindset. Be kind of loosey-goosey, relaxed. Okay, sometimes it means this, sometimes it means that. And be open to the idea that what you think is the meaning of this word may just be part of the meaning of this word. And it's actually more or different or something, right? Right. Okay, so we're going to do this together. You, me, and some tools we're going to be using. And it's going to be hopefully playful, but I want to take you through some specific steps to explore the process. And of course, there will be specific examples. And it's great to see some more people joining live. Hello, Mary, the one and only, and Susenta. Hello. Okay. So let's look at a sentence here. Let's hop over to my little temporary notepad where I have, well, a paragraph, I should say. A paragraph. And I'm going to read the paragraph, and we're going to try to learn a word that you may already know. In fact, I think you know, a lot of people know this word, but it's not as simple as you think, okay? Here it is. Ready? While analyzing the company's financial statements, I couldn't make sense of the bottom line figure. I decided to figure out, I got to get this Grammarly out of here. Hold on. Get out of here for this session, please. Bye-bye. In my way. I couldn't make sense of the bottom line figure. I decided to figure out what was causing the discrepancies. Eventually, I realized that an important figure had been omitted from the report, which altered the overall financial picture. Okay, so we're going to be exploring the word figure here. We might look at words like discrepancies too, but figure is a rabbit hole that we will be going down. And it is, again, not as simple as you think. So, let's do this. Why don't we start with guesses? What we can do is ask ourselves little questions to think in the context what it might mean, right? What it should mean, without really looking at anything else. This is the step that I want to call discovery and context in the real world. Okay, and I see in the chat, Lena says, sorry, I need to go back to sleep. Good night. In Australia, it's very late. Have a good night. Echelon, yes. And Mary says, I'm preparing for CELTA. The podcasts are useful. Oh, great. Thanks, Mary. Hopefully the process works. CELTA, huh? If you have any questions about that, let me know. I definitely have opinions. I don't understand bottom line figure. Okay. So this is the process of exploration. First, what are we noticing here? Well, number one, what we're not doing is learning words in arbitrary, random lists of words. I don't believe in that. I think that's a bad thing to do in general, simply because, unless you have a very specific purpose, simply because doing that disconnects it from any natural context. But if you find words in reading, in your daily life, you hear them from your boss or a colleague or a friend or a guy on the internet, if you find words yourself and then write them down, then you always have this original reference point to tie them back to, which is a great thing. That's what you want. You want an original reference point to tie them back to, the word. So focus on discovery. So here we have it in context, right? Okay. So now, we need to kind of try to figure out what these might mean, and let's kind of think through it. So I couldn't make sense of the bottom line figure. So I'm looking at financial statements. Oh, I selected the wrong thing here. Okay, so I'm looking at financial statements, right? Financial statements showing a lot of numbers, right? Showing probably profit and loss and that sort of stuff, right? For a company. Expenses. I couldn't make sense of something, so I couldn't understand something. And bottom line figure. So let's say I don't know what bottom line is, but figure is going to have something to do with finances. So maybe that's a number, an important number. Okay, and then I decided to figure out what was causing the discrepancies. Maybe I don't know discrepancies. So figure out what was causing something. Causing what? Usually causing a problem. Maybe there's a problem or something like that. Maybe discrepancies means that. I decided to figure out what was causing. So I decided to something what was causing. Well, it could be maybe solve, or maybe that would be explore, maybe learn more about. It could mean different things here, so I'm kind of guessing. So notice the first thing I'm doing is I'm not looking up the answer. Just imagine, even if you know the answer, imagine you don't. What I do is kind of use the context to make a guess in my head, right? That's important because it's forcing you to think about the meaning without knowing for sure. It's forcing you to turn your brain on, right? I realized that an important figure had been omitted. Okay, an important figure also related to the statement, right? This company's financial statements. So that might also be a kind of number. Is it just any number? Had been omitted from the report. Okay, omitted Maybe I don't even know what that means, okay? Which altered the overall financial picture. So we're talking about finances here. Some things are wrong. I need to understand what's going on. Something about that, maybe. Okay. Now, what you could do at this point, just ask yourself those questions. What does this maybe mean? What does this maybe mean? Figure out. This has to be something about guessing or something about understanding or something about exploring this, right? So once I go through that process, maybe I write down what I think it is. For example, I think the first figure may connect to the statement. That means it's probably a number of some kind, okay? And then the second is about discrepancies. And probably means something like discover or learn about or solve. Again, I'm just putting down example guesses here. The final one is also about the finances. It may also be about a number of some kind. Okay, so I'm just putting down some guesses. And we're here in what I will call step 1. And step 1 is discovery. Oh, my hands are cold. Discovery and context. Okay? Can I bold this? This is a simple note-taking thing. So can I bold? Nope, I can't. That's fine. Okay, now I want to actually try to figure this out by learning the correct answers. This is, depending on your personality, the hard part or the most fun part. This is where you get to learn it for real. We're not working on remembering it. We're not working on using it. We're trying to learn it. Now, for some words, that's very simple and very easy. For other words, it's incredibly difficult because there are so many meanings and so many uses. Here, it seems like we have maybe 2 different uses of this word figure, but there are more. And so this is, I think, the fun part. This is the part that we spend probably most of our time on. So now we're on to step 2. And step 2 is going to be understand the word. That is our project. Our goal is to understand the word. All of the word. All right. So maybe the first thing I want to do is just talk through some of my thoughts and get an idea. And then I'll look at a dictionary and I may play a little bit with ChatGPT in depth, but I want to have a simple conversation. So let's pop open ChatGPT. Just the advanced voice mode, though.
Got it.
I'm gonna pause
For
it.
advanced vocabulary, it's important to focus on context and usage. You might explore nuanced words within specific themes, like business, literature, or technology. Discussing these words in real-life scenarios can help illustrate their depth and application.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. What's up?
Oh, great. Yeah, so I'm just reading this this paragraph, and there are a couple of things I'm not sure I understand completely, and maybe we could just talk through it. I'm learning some words. So here's the whole paragraph. I'll just read it out, and then I'm going to give some guesses. So while analyzing the company's financial statements, I couldn't make sense of the bottom line figure. I decided to figure out what was causing the discrepancies. Eventually, I realized that an important figure had been omitted from the report, which altered the overall financial picture. Okay, so from what I can tell the first figure is the word I'm trying to learn here. The first figure is something about maybe a number of some kind, a bottom line figure. And I think the third one is also a number, an important figure. And the second one I think means to solve or maybe find the answer.
Great analysis. You're on the right track. In this context, figure indeed refers to a number or statistic. The bottom line figure is the final, most important number in a financial statement, usually indicating net profit or loss. Figure out means to solve or understand something. And the third figure also refers to a numerical value or statistic that was left out, altering the financial understanding. Make sense?
Yeah, but then why wouldn't I just say an important number had been omitted? Why does it have to be a figure rather than a number? Why use figure instead of just say an important number had been omitted?
Good question. In financial contexts, figure is often used to refer to specific amounts, statistics, or values in a more formal or technical way. Saying an important number is correct, but using figure can imply a specific recognized value within a report, making it sound more professional.
Okay, so in this case, using figure is just a norm for this kind of thing, right?
Exactly. It's a convention in financial and formal contexts. Using figure aligns with the professional language commonly found in reports and analysis.
Okay, yeah, okay, I got it. Now, what about figure out? Is figure out exactly the same as solve? Are there any differences between figure out, solve, and find the answer?
Figure out, solve, and find the answer are similar, but have slight differences in nuance. Figure out implies a process of understanding or working through something to reach a conclusion. Solve is more direct and often used for clear-cut problems, like equations or puzzles. Find the answer is more general, suggesting the discovery of a solution or explanation without specifying the method. So, while they're close, depends on the context and the process involved.
Okay, I see. So maybe it's more about the process. Figure out is more about a process. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Glad that helped clarify things.
Wait, well, by the way, what about discrepancies? Can you tell me what a discrepancy is?
Sure. A discrepancy refers to a difference or inconsistency, especially when things are expected to match or align. In the context of financial statements, discrepancies could be unexpected differences between numbers that should theoretically be the same, indicating errors or issues that need to be investigated.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. That's pretty simple. I'll explore that later maybe, but I think that's it. And omit means to remove something, right? Or to skip it or not include it, right? I think I know that one.
Exactly, you've got it. Omit means to leave something out, either intentionally or accidentally. It implies that something is missing from where it should be. If you have any more questions down the line, feel free to ask.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. So now we haven't looked at a dictionary yet. We haven't really done any text in ChatGPT or any practice. We're just trying to get a sense for it based on our first guesses. I think that is a helpful thing to do. I like to talk through it. I think that's even more helpful. Talking through it like I just did forces you to kind of think on your feet a little bit more and is an excuse to practice talking, right? So, okay, so we've got that. Now what we want to do, we're in the process of step 2, which is understanding the word. We had a simple conversation with someone to check our general understanding. But those aren't the only meanings of the word, and so we really need to dive deeper. So this is where a dictionary can actually be useful. So let's now go over to my favorite, still my favorite dictionary. The only downside is that the website, I'll be honest, is really ugly. It's a very ugly website. No offense, but it's ugly. It's thefreedictionary.com. I'm not sponsored by them, but I think it's good. It's very good. And they don't have a dark mode on their website, so that's a thing. So we'll just go to search, and we're going to put in the word figure. Okay, and we should get a lot. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit more so it's easier to read. Okay. And some of this might be familiar, but then now we're going to get into stuff that might be new or different than we thought. Let's just listen to the pronunciation one time.
Figure.
Figure. What? Pretty loud. Hold on.
Figure. Figure. Figure.
Okay, I have to say the pronunciation tool is terrible. I mean, that is what it is, but... All right. So now we kind of read through these, and a couple things I like about this dictionary rather than others. Number one, it gives you clear examples in gold text that are easy to find, right? And we'll look at all of these. We're going to really dive into this. And it also can give you idioms and phrases, which is, I think, very useful. Most dictionaries don't do that very well. And it helps you to kind of explore more things that are similar more easily. So I'm a big fan of this website. Okay, so and I find that the definitions are written in a somewhat clear way. A written or printed symbol representing something other than a letter, especially a number. Okay, a written or printed symbol. So it could be a number, any number, or something that's not a letter. Okay. Figures, mathematical calculations. Good at figures. Okay, so good at math would be good at figures. And it gives the examples right after, which I like. An amount represented by numbers. So this meaning is, I think, the one we were looking at. An amount represented in numbers. Sold for a large figure. Sold for a large figure. All right, I'm going to copy this, and we'll explore it more, but I'm having trouble. My fingers are cold. I'm sorry. My fingers are feeling a little bit cold. We'll come back to that, but that's something I want to explore more. So an amount represented in numbers, sold for a large figure, or I couldn't understand the bottom line figure. I think that's what we're looking at. One of the digits specified as making up a large number. A salary in the six figures. A salary in the six figures. One of the digits specified as making up a larger number. A salary in the six figures. Okay. I might need a couple more examples of that. All right. Okay, you know what? Let's bring up our old pal here. Let's bring up our old pal here to explore this a little bit more. Okay. Oh, it's not letting me bring up advanced voice. Oh, I have to open a new chat every time. Mary says, I've noticed giving an accurate connotation of the new vocabulary is going to shift the reality of language learners massively. They will get it later on when they level up to C2. Yeah. The connotation is the tricky part. That's the learning part. The connotation is really what matters, though, ultimately. That's what really matters. I'm just looking at the definition of the word figure here on a dictionary website, and there are two that I want a little bit more maybe detail on. So the definitions are A written or printed symbol representing something other than a letter, especially a number. B, mathematical calculations, for example, good at figures. C, an amount represented by numbers, sold for a large figure. And D, one of the digits specified as making up a larger number, a salary in 6 figures. So could you give me a couple more examples of C, and then could you explain D in a little more detail?
Certainly. For definition C, which refers to an amount represented by numbers, here are 2 examples. The painting was auctioned off for a substantial figure, far exceeding its estimated value. The company's revenue last quarter reached an impressive figure, signaling strong growth. For definition D, which is about one of the digits in a larger number, the term figure is used to describe each individual digit within a number. For instance, in a 6-figure salary, the salary ranges from $100,000 to $999,999. Each digit in this range is considered a figure. If a car costs 5 figures, the price is somewhere between $10,000 and $99,999, with each.
So if I say a 6-figure salary, the point is that it doesn't matter whether it's 100,000 or 600,000. The point is that it's under $1 million and over 100,000. Is that right?
Exactly. A 6-figure salary indicates any amount from $100,000 to $999,999. The specific amount within that range doesn't matter. The key point is that it's a 6-figure number.
So the point is, we're actually counting. So one of the digits specified as making up a larger number is that you have the larger number. Let's say it's 500,000. One of the digits making up that larger number is 5, and another one of the digits making up that number is 0. In fact, there are 5 zeros and 1 5, but that doesn't matter because totally there are 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're just counting them. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Each digit in the number is a figure, and for a 6-figure number like 500,000, there are 6 figures, 1 5 and 5 zeros. The total count of these digits determines that it's a 6-figure number.
Okay, that makes sense. But the example's a little weird, right? A salary in the 6 figures? Why is it the 6 figures? That's a little weird, right?
It does sound a bit unusual, but the phrase, a salary in the 6 figures, is just a way to emphasize that the salary falls somewhere within the range of $100,000 to $999,999. It's a common
Would a
expression.
6-figure salary be more common, though?
Yes, 6-figure salary is more commonly used and sounds more natural. It directly refers to the range of salaries between $100,000 and $999,999 without needing the.
Okay, now definition C is I have an original text here, and I think it's definition C. While analyzing the company's financial statements, I couldn't make sense of the bottom line figure, and then later, eventually, I realized that an important figure had been omitted. So this is definition C, right? For both of those.
Yes, both instances fit definition C. In the first example, the bottom line figure refers to the final total or amount on the financial statement, representing a specific numerical value. In the second example, an important figure signifies a crucial number that was missing from the financial data. Both uses of figure refer to numerical amounts.
Okay, got it. Just a quick question. What does one of the digits specified as? What does specified as mean? That also sounds a bit weird.
Specified as in this context means designated or identified as. So when we say one of the digits specified as making up a larger number, it refers to each individual digit being recognized or counted as part of the entire number. It highlights that each digit contributes to forming the complete number.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now let's keep going. We have a lot here, and we want to get a deeper sense for these. Okay. And this is only one word. We're still just talking about the word figure. Okay, so we have a second definition under noun. The N stands for noun. Or second, I guess, general definition, mathematics, a geometric. Okay, so this is not about numbers. Previously, we were talking about numbers. Now we're talking about something else. Mathematics, a geometric form consisting of any combination of points, lines, or planes. Example, a triangle is a plane figure. The outline, form, or silhouette of a thing. Saw the figure of a cat in the window. Silhouette, I know, is just the shape, if it's very light behind them and dark in the foreground. The shape or form of a human body. So we're talking about shapes here. A fashion model with an attractive figure. And an indistinct object or shape. The figures in the mist turned out to be lamp posts. Okay, so now we're talking about shapes here. Shapes of some kind. I'm getting the idea that it can be used in different ways. A triangle is a plane figure, but also if it's a geometric form consisting of any combination of points, lines, or planes, then a square would be a figure too. It's a way to talk about any shape without being specific, right? I might say, what is that figure there? Or those figures over there maybe seem to be about the same size, maybe something like that. And then an outline, a form or silhouette, saw a figure of a cat. So there, maybe I can talk about, without talking about the cat, the fact that it looks like a shape. So a figure of an old woman with a long nose, or a figure of a dinosaur. My question there will be, what's the difference between a figure of a dinosaur and a dinosaur? If we're talking about the shape or form of a human body, a nice figure, an attractive figure. So there, maybe I have a question about, well, is having a nice figure or an attractive figure physical, or is it only for women? Is it usually used for women? What does it mean for a man to have a nice figure? Is it about specific shapes, or is it just about being thin? So maybe I can ask about that. And then an indistinct object, the figures in the mist there. So figures in the mist turned out to be, maybe suggests that as I walk into the mist, the things which were not so clear to me, which were figures, are now clear. So they're lampposts. So I don't call them figures anymore because I know what they are. So I might use the word figure there to say a thing over there that has a shape I can't quite make out. I can't quite tell what it is. Strange figures in the night that once I know what they are no longer figures. It's a cat, it's a dog, it's a lamp, right? Because I know what they are. But when I don't know what they are, then they're just figures. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's explore this one a little bit. John says, I notice your... Oh, this is just an advertisement. I get a lot of emails about that. I get a lot of emails of people who want to sell me stuff. You have no idea. No idea. It's crazy. A lot of people trying to sell me stuff. If you want to sell me stuff, don't tell me what you can sell me. Show me clear evidence of other people who you've helped be way more successful than they were before. Very clear. We did this, and now it's this much better with them. And here are 10 examples. And if you can do that really well, and it's obvious that it's real, then I will pay attention. But if it's just like, hey, I can do this thing for you. Okay, well, why you? You know? All right, anyway, back to the thing. All right, so let's make sure I'm right about that. Now we're talking about figure with shapes. So geometric figures. Triangle is a figure plane. I think that one is sort of like any shape, any old shape, like a bunch of figures drawn on a piece of paper. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. In the context of shapes, figure refers to any geometric form or shape. It can be a triangle, circle, square, or any other shape drawn or represented on a surface. When you mention a bunch of figures drawn on a piece of paper, it implies various shapes or forms without specifying their types.
Well, what if they're actually not on a piece of paper? What if they're plastic? Can I have a bunch of figures in my hand, or would I say something else in that case?
You can still say a bunch of figures if they're plastic shapes in your hand. It would imply you have various geometric or modeled shapes, like toy blocks or math manipulatives. The term figures can apply to physical shapes made of different materials, not just those drawn on paper.
Okay, so the point is just that I'm not being specific about which one. It's a square, it's a circle. It's just basically a placeholder name for various shapes.
Exactly. Figures serves as a general term.
What about the next one is, I saw the figure of a cat in the window. So the silhouette of a cat, the something of a something, the figure of a something would be to say that it's shaped like that, but the point there is that I can't see them in detail, right? They just see the outline of them. And the point is that because I can't see them in detail, they kind of look like a shape. So I say the figure of a fat man, or the figure of, hamburger, or the figure of a cat, or the figure of a dinosaur.
Yes, exactly. When you say the figure of a cat, you're referring to the outline or silhouette that resembles a cat without seeing the details. It's a way to describe the shape or form of something when you can only make out its general outline, especially in low light or from a distance. This usage of figure emphasizes the shape rather than the details.
Well, okay, so if I say the figure of a dinosaur, when can I not say figure of a dinosaur? If I'm holding a plastic toy dinosaur in my hand, can I say this is the figure of a dinosaur, or should I not say that?
If you're holding a plastic toy dinosaur, it's more precise to simply say, this is a toy dinosaur, or this is a model of a dinosaur. Figure of a dinosaur is typically used for shapes or outlines that resemble a dinosaur but lack details, like a shadow or silhouette.
What about if I'm looking at clouds? When I see figures in the clouds, can I say I see a figure of a rabbit up in the sky? Is that a way to talk about? Can I use clouds to talk about figures? Figure of a dinosaur up in the sky as a cloud? How would I say that?
Yes, you can definitely use figure when talking about shapes you see in clouds. You could say, I see a figure of a rabbit in the clouds, or there's a figure of a dinosaur up in the sky.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good. What about, is this the same? The figures in the mist turned out to be lampposts. Am I just using figure there again kind of as a placeholder? Because I don't know it's a lamppost or not, I use figure. And then once I see that it's a lamppost, I don't use figure anymore. Is that right?
Exactly. You're using figures as a placeholder when you can't clearly identify what you're seeing through the mist. Once you realize they're lampposts, you would refer to them specifically as such. Figure is useful for describing vague or unclear shapes.
Okay, now, what about a figure of a human? So if someone says that a model has an attractive figure, he has a nice figure, am I saying there that they're just in good shape and they're thin, or am I talking about curves? Am I talking only about women? What am I, when I say that someone has a nice figure, what exactly am I saying?
When you say someone has a nice figure, You're generally referring to their body shape or physique, suggesting that it's well proportioned or aesthetically pleasing. This compliment isn't limited to thinness. It can also imply fitness, muscle tone, or curves, depending on the context and cultural standards. Although it's often used in reference to women, it can be applied to men as well. The phrase
So if what I mean to say is that you're very thin, actually saying that you have a nice figure maybe is not the right thing to say. If I mean that, so a nice figure is a compliment, but if I just want to say this person is very thin, not as a compliment, but simply as a statement about the fact that they're thin, saying figure is the wrong thing. I would use figure when I want to compliment their shapes, basically. But it's subjective. It's what I think. It's the shapes that I think are attractive. It's not according to other people's standards, right?
Exactly. Saying someone has a nice figure is indeed a subjective compliment based on what you find aesthetically pleasing. If you simply want to describe someone as thin without implying any judgment or compliment, you would just say thin or slim. Using figure generally implies a positive assessment of their overall body shape.
Got it. That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay. So it's separating, yeah. And it could be for a man or a woman, right? Okay. Well, I want to go back to the earlier point about figures. I have a quick question. Is there a noun for an act of seeing figures in things? It's just a behavior of seeing figures in things that may not be figures, like seeing Jesus on a piece of toast, or maybe seeing a snake when actually it's a rope, or seeing a dinosaur in the sky as a cloud.
Yes, that phenomenon is called pareidolia. It's when people perceive familiar patterns, like faces or objects, in random or vague stimuli. So, seeing a dinosaur in the clouds, or a face on a piece of toast, would be examples of pareidolia.
Pareidolia. Okay. Got it.
Yep, pareidolia. It's a fascinating aspect of how our brains try to make sense of the world.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. So, where are we with our original here? We're still in understand the word. Pareidolia. I think that's right. Yeah. I didn't know. I haven't heard the word before. It's new. It's a new one for me. Pareidolia. Look it up. Pareidolia. Let me know if that's correct. Okay, so we had a simple conversation, and now what are we doing? We are reading. We're reading definitions and examples to get an intuitive sense for the meanings and forms of the word. So, and the key here is meanings, not one meaning. We have an idea about numbers and shapes now. We're getting an idea for just the nouns so far, right? But we're not just saying, oh, this means this. We're trying to think through it. We're trying to... This is where we don't want to say, I know the definition. That's not so important. The important thing is to have your own concept of this thing. And to have, to do this in ChatGPT, I think is great. You can go back and forth. You can say, what about this and what about that, as we're doing here, right? And then you can get, if ChatGPT is good at anything, it's good at this kind of thing. Giving you a general sense for, people use it like this, but not like that, right? So we're kind of thinking through it out loud. And it's a shorthand because then we don't have to look at 10 more examples. We can. Looking at more examples is helpful too. But I think it's a good way of doing it. We'll do it a different way now, just so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so that's definition 2. A person, especially a well-known, famous historical figure. Okay, I think I know that one. A famous historical figure is just a historical person, an important figure. Again, maybe we're not saying... It's kind of like a shape, right? The shape of a famous person in that sense. Impression or appearance made, cut a dashing figure at the reception. Oh, okay. All right, so let's do an example of this one. Let's take this. Let's say... let's do this in ChatGPT, the text version. So give me 10 example sentences that naturally use the word figure as in a well-known or famous person. So now notice I'm using the phrase as in. The phrase as in is a key phrase when I want to specify which meaning. So I said, give me 10 example sentences that naturally use the word figure. Because figure has so many meanings, I want to specify it as in. It's a very useful little phrase, right? Sometimes you use it to specify letters if you're on the phone. That's M as in Mary. M as in Mary, because M on the phone sounds like N, right? M, N sounds the same, right? I always have to say with my name, that's D as in Deborah or D as in dog when I spell my name. So they know it's not B, because D and B sound the same over the phone. All right. The tutor became a prominent figure in the literary world after winning the Pulitzer Prize. Elon Musk is a polarizing figure in the tech industry. The actor was a beloved figure in Hollywood for over 5 decades. After leading the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. remains an iconic figure in history. The scientist's groundbreaking research made her a key figure in environmental studies. The musician's death left a void in the hearts of fans who saw him as a cultural figure of their generation. As a figure in the world of fashion, she revolutionized how people view sustainable clothing. ChatGPT loves to talk about sustainability and the environment. The politician was a controversial figure, often criticized for his polarizing policies. Her humanitarian work turned her into a global figure for social justice, and the teacher was a respected figure in the local community. So being respected in the local community doesn't mean you're famous on a global scale, so it's all relative. It's relative to the globe. It's relative to your, a figure in the fashion world, right? So this person may not be famous worldwide. It's not just objectively, this person is famous in the world and everyone knows them, like Taylor Swift. It's more like, well, within this circle, they're famous. Within the circle of environment, within the circle of local community, within the circle of fashion, right? So it's very relative. Can I say a Hollywood figure? Okay, let's say that. Let's see. I will make a few examples. Please give feedback on whether I am using the word naturally in this sense. Okay. One, let's see. A well-known Bollywood figure recently retired. Okay. And let's see. After the success of that show, she became a successful figure in Hollywood. Okay. And let's see, I can come up with another one. Can I make it very local? Like, in my house, I am considered a major figure, a major comedic figure. That's 4 people. Can I do it? Let's see. Let's see what we get here. I think I could say that, but it might be kind of ironic. A well-known Bollywood figure recently retired. This sentence uses figure appropriately to describe a well-known or famous person in Bollywood. Yes, I think so too. After the success of that show, she became a successful figure in Hollywood. This is almost natural, but the repetition of successful feels redundant. It might sound more natural to say, after the success of that show, she became a prominent figure in Hollywood. Yeah, actually, yes, that's right. Repeating success does sound a little bit odd. Thank you for catching that. In my house, I'm considered a major comedic figure. This is creative and works humorously in the right context. It's a playful use of figure and adds a personal touch. It might be worth considering the audience to ensure they understand the self-deprecating humor. Right, that's how I meant it. It's self-deprecating because I'm kind of saying I'm famous among 4 people, right? It's someone who's maybe grappling with the fact that they're not actually well-known or famous, but within a group of 3 or 4 people, they are famous, but that means that they're actually not. And so there's some kind of irony or, as it's described here, self-deprecating humor there, basically making fun of yourself a little bit, right? Okay. All right, good. We could make a quiz there, but we may work on that later. Let's keep going. Impression or appearance made, cut a dashing figure. I'm going to skip that one because it's so uncommon that just in the interest of time, I'm not saying you should skip it, but in the interest of time, a person, animal, or object that symbolizes something. The figure of, we looked at the figure of a cat, the figure of a snake. I think we know that one. So it's kind of just repeating that. A pictorial or sculptural representation, especially of the body. Okay. And then diagram, drew a figure of the office layout. Design pattern, as in textile, silk with a paisley figure. An illustration printed from an engraved plate or block. Okay. Configuration or distinct group of steps in a dance. A pattern traced by a series of movements, as in ice skating. In music, excuse me, a melodic or harmonic unit, often constituting, the basis of a larger phrase or structure. So we're getting into very, very specialized. So we don't want to, I don't want to have to take you through every single one of these nouns because I want to talk about verbs, and I want to talk about intransitive verbs, and I want to talk about some phrases as well. So let's just pick out 1 or 2 and explore these. So continuing with figure, I have a couple of the definitions, and for each one, maybe you could give me a simple explanation and an example. So the first one is a pictorial or sculptural representation, especially of the human body.
Sure. When figure refers to a pictorial or sculptural representation, it means an image or statue of a human body. Here's a simple explanation and example. A figure, in this sense, is a visual or three-dimensional depiction of a person, often found in art like paintings or sculptures. Example: the museum displayed a stunning marble figure of a Greek goddess, showcasing intricate details of the human form.
Okay, so now could I say in the same way a figure of a lion if I mean that I made it out of clay or something?
Yes, you could say a figure of a lion if you've sculpted it out of clay or created it from another material.
I see.
It
Okay, all right.
What's the next
good.
definition?
The next definition is a diagram. For example, it drew a figure of the office layout.
In this context, figure refers to a diagram, which is a simple drawing or plan used to illustrate information. Here's a simple explanation and example. A figure, in this sense, is a visual representation, like a sketch or chart, that shows...
Wait a second, that's not an example. Give me a real example.
Sure, here's an example. The architect drew a figure of the office layout to show the placement of walls, desks,
Okay, wait,
and...
no, that's my example, the one I read. Give me a different one.
Got it. Here's a different example. The teacher drew a figure on the board to illustrate the water cycle, showing the process of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation.
So is this where in test you see in figure A and figure B, and then they ask a question about, for example, the diagram of the water table, and the question says, explain the process represented in figure A. Is that the same?
Yes, exactly. In tests or textbooks, when they refer to figure A or figure B, they're pointing to diagrams or illustrations that accompany the text.
Got it. Okay. Okay, now let's do one more. This one I'm confused about. A design or pattern, as in a textile, silk with a paisley figure.
In this context, figure refers to a design or pattern, especially on fabric. Here's a simple explanation and example. A figure in textiles is a decorative motif or pattern woven or printed onto fabric, adding visual interest. Example: the dress was made of silk with a paisley figure featuring...
That's the example I gave. Give me a different example.
Of course. Here's another example. The curtains were adorned with a floral figure, displaying...
Give me another one.
Sure. Here's another. Example: the tablecloth had a geometric figure consisting of interlocking squares.
Is this common? I've never heard this before. Is this an uncommon usage of the word figure?
Yes, this usage of figure is less common in everyday conversation. It's more often used in specific contexts, such as in textile or design industries, where patterns and motifs on fabrics are discussed. In general conversation, figure is more commonly associated with numbers, shapes, or representations of people or animals.
I think this is where dictionaries are really useful. Because while it is very useful to kind of talk through this stuff, I had to ask, is this common? I honestly I've heard this one, but this one, silk with a paisley figure, I would say a paisley pattern or something else on it, or just paisley instead of figure. It's one I haven't seen before. And so there are always going to be meanings of a word that has many, many meanings that maybe are so uncommon that it's not worth learning. This is where I think dictionaries are useful, especially this one, because you are getting kind of a list based on how common it is, right? So if we start with this one, we're going down the list. There are 4 things here we need to know. Probably most of them are common. If we're going down the list on number 2, 4 things here, probably most of them are pretty common. But if we're now starting to get into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and under 7, there are 3 things under one of these numbers all the way down here, probably it's going to be less common. So generally they're listed within, for example, the noun category in descending order based on how common they are, right? So, a distinct group of steps in a dance. Okay, yeah, I know that one. A pattern traced by a series of movements as in ice skating, a figure 8 especially. Okay, yes, but common? Not particularly, right? Not particularly. Okay, so let's just quickly go through verbs and see if they're different. It's important to understand the different forms, right? We have the noun form, the verb form, transitive and intransitive. So let's Let's just explore this a little bit here. Excuse me. And we get nice figuring and figures so that we see the specific forms of the word. Mathematics to calculate with numbers, figured the sum. Okay, to make a likeness of or depict. Okay, we might need to ask about that one. To adorn or design, to adorn with a design or figures. To write a sequence of conventionalized numbers below or above. To embellish with an ornamental pattern. To conclude, believe or predict, I never figured that this would happen. To consider or disregard, figured them as con artists. Okay, and then intransitive verb. To be or seem important or prominent, a key fact that figures in our understanding of what happened. Okay, so now we're getting into, and then we have some phrasal verbs, figure in, figure on, figure out, go figure as an idiom. This is great, by the way. This is awesome. Synonyms, we'll skip the synonyms. Synonyms are words that mean the same thing. So, okay. Let's pick out one of the verbs here. To conclude, believe or predict. Again, just in the interest of time. I don't want to be too exhaustive here. To conclude, believe, or predict. I never figured this would happen. And then to consider or regard, figured them as con artists. So now what I'm going to do is try to practice these. So I'll paste them in and give some instructions here. Give me a clear and simple explanation of each of the meanings of figure below, and then 3 additional natural sounding examples of each. And then finally, create a simple quiz with challenging answers in multiple choice so that I can better learn the meanings. So now what I've done is I want to specifically practice these things. I'm specifying what I want to do. I want to learn. I want to understand. Maybe the dictionary definitions weren't enough. I want to see the examples, and then I want to start practicing. And that will take us into our next step here. So meaning A, to conclude, believe, or predict. Explanation. This meaning of figure is used when you determine, expect, or believe something based on reasoning, assumption, or intuition. Okay? I figured they'd be late, knowing their usual habits. She figured the meeting would run longer than expected and brought snacks. I figured you'd want a coffee, so I grabbed you one on my way. Okay. So I might have a follow-up question here, and I can ask something like, figured you'd be late. Well, let's see. I want my, is the first meaning formal? What is the connotation of saying something like, I figured they would be late? So I want to understand the connotation. The connotation of a word is how it feels when people say it. The meaning of figure, to conclude, believe, or predict, is not formal. It is more casual and conversational. When you say, I figured they would be late, it carries a relaxed, matter-of-fact tone, suggesting that your assumption was based on prior knowledge, experience, or intuition. I figured they would be late. Neutral to slightly informal. It's not negative or overly casual, but it wouldn't typically be used in formal writing or speech. Absolutely. It suggests you had a reason to expect their lateness, whether it's based on their habits, context, or other clues. Right. Let's go back to our second one here. B, to consider or regard. This meaning of figure is used when you perceive or think of someone or something in a certain way. Everyone figured her as the best choice for the role. I always figured him as more of a thinker than a doer. They figured the company as a safe investment, but things didn't turn out that way. Okay, so for this one, these examples kind of feel to me like people are making assumptions. Are there any special connotations here? And is this the same as saying they assumed? And is it as common as assumed? The examples you provided do carry a sense. The examples you provided do carry a sense of making assumptions, but there are some nuances that differentiate figured from assumed and influence how it feels in use. Let's break it down. Slightly informal, figured tends to feel conversational and less rigid than assumed. So assumed feels more formal and figured sounds less formal. It implies a belief or conclusion, but often with a touch of informality or personal reasoning. Yeah. Reason belief, unlike assumed, which can suggest something taken for granted without evidence, figured often implies that the belief or conclusion is based on some reasoning, intuition, or prior knowledge. That's a big difference. So if you assume something, you don't know if I thought about it at all. It's just, boom, oh, I assume you brought this. Oh, well, why did you assume? Whereas if you figure that, there's some reasons behind why you felt that way, right? Less final or absolute, figured can feel less certain or definitive than assumed. That's true also. Assumed feels like I'm pretty confident and that's it, and that's what I think, and figured is sort of an ongoing feeling of this seems right to me, but it's not final. It suggests the speaker's perception without strongly implying they think it's the only possibility. Then we can look at our examples here. The quiz. Which sentence uses figure to mean conclude? I figured the dog was lost and called animal control. He figured the painter as slightly talented. She figured as a leader in her industry. So A is the right answer. To conclude, I figured the dog was lost. So I'm seeing the as a sort of hint that doesn't mean conclude, but is the more like assumption meaning. I figured it would rain today, so I brought an umbrella. Which sentence uses figure to mean consider or regard? They figured the new employee as a great asset. So I can see this now as triggers me to know, kind of, or guess that I'm talking about the consider or regard meaning, or make that assumption meaning, rather than to make that conclusion, right? Which sentence is incorrect based on the meanings of figure? Okay. I figured she was trustworthy, but I was wrong. He figured as an important figure in history. We figured the schedule as too tight to allow for breaks. Well, he figured as an important figure. We figured the schedule as too tight. Probably would be was too tight to allow for breaks. So I'm going to say 3 is C, right? Should be was too tight. Is that correct? Figured in this context does not align naturally with the meaning of to consider or regard. Huh? We thought the schedule was too tight to allow for breaks. We considered the schedule too tight to allow for breaks. Thanks for pointing that out. This is incorrect. Oh, I'm confused now. That is correct. I think ChatGPT might be wrong on this one. You figure it as too tight. Figured it was. I don't know. Hold on a second. Let me figure this out. Where's the quiz? I have to go back up to the quiz. Let me read the question more carefully. Maybe I read it too quickly. Okay. Which sentence is incorrect based on the meanings of figure? I figured she was trustworthy, but I was wrong. That is correct. He figured as an important figure in history. Well, it's using figure in a way that we haven't learned, but that doesn't mean this whole thing is wrong. We figured the schedule as too tight to allow for breaks. I mean, normally you would say we figured the schedule was too tight to allow for breaks, not as too tight. So I still say C is wrong. All right, we'll skip that one. But they're saying B. He figured as an important figure in history. The first figure, meaning doesn't align. Right, but I think ChatGPT got a little mixed up on that one. I think ChatGPT is a little bit confused on that one. It's C that's unnatural, not B. Okay. All right, so the point being, we're just playing around with this. We're playing around with the meanings. We're doing it in different ways. We might, instead of looking in the dictionary, we might just do it in ChatGPT and get a long list of definitions with examples. I like the definitions in the dictionary because I can get an idea about how common each one is. What we're doing is kind of looking at a lot of examples, maybe doing some quizzes, and then we go to the important step 3, which is to use it, to practice using it. Usage, we did this a little bit already, but step 3, usage and feedback. Now, usage and feedback is, let's recap. First, we discovered it. We explore and we discover. Second, we learn. We didn't learn all of it. We didn't have time to look at every single thing, but you spent time looking at the forms and the meanings and the connotations. Maybe you practice a little bit with quizzes. Now you try using it yourself. We did a bit of that, right? But you try making examples. Here is where getting feedback is really important. This is where you want to be very careful when you're using something like ChatGPT, where if you just say, tell me what you think about this example, you may be missing an important piece, which might be the connotation, whether or not the whole sentence is natural sounding, not just correct. So you have to specify clearly. Let's try one of the meanings we looked at, which is, I like, let's use the figures in the mist. Fashion show with an attractive figure. Saw a figure of a cat. Okay, let's use this one. And let's say something like this. I want you to read my examples of the word figure and give me feedback on how well I have used the word in the sentence. I am trying to use it. I use figure as in the shape or outline of something. Is that the one I said I was going to do? Make sure my examples, let's see, give me feedback on how natural I have used it, how naturally, I have used it, whether the sentence is correct, whether the whole sentence is correct, and if there are any connotations to the sentence. let's see. So I might say, I thought I saw the figure of a raccoon. No, what did I? A groundhog. Shuffling across my backyard. But I may have been mistaken. Okay, number 2, let's see. What would be a good example that's very different from that? The figures of trees on the hill against the setting sun looked like the shoreline of a, let's say, looked like a rocky shoreline. Let's say it like that. Okay, let's try these examples. Let's misspell a word here. Okay, here we go. Feedback. So now we're trying to think through, okay, this is the meaning I want, and I could have made the prompt a little simpler, but you get the idea. This is the kind of feedback I want. Now I'm going to practice and do this kind of back and forth. And this is how I build it into my habit patterns. So now I kind of think I understand the meanings or this specific meaning and the forms. Now I want to see if I can actually do it. And once you start doing it, then it starts to stick. So this helps you remember, but it also helps you to build the habit of using it a little bit. And when you're in the habit of using it, then you'll find it just pops out of your mouth sometimes, naturally, right? Okay. Connotation of figured in these examples. Figured tends to feel conversational and less rigid. Wait, what? Oh, we're in the wrong place. Okay. Oh, I have to choose one of these. I think I prefer the longer breakdown. I prefer this response. Well, give me the response. Oh, okay. This is it. Here we go. I thought I saw the figure of a groundhog shuffling across my yard, but I may have been mistaken. This sentence uses figure naturally in the sense of a shape or outline. It fits the context well, as figure is often used to describe indistinct or shadowy forms, especially when observing something from a distance or in poor lighting. There's a small typo in cross. It should be across. Absolutely. Thank you for catching that. I thought I saw the figure of a groundhog shuffling across my backyard, but I may have been mistaken. The sentence conveys an observational tone, creating a sense of curiosity or uncertainty. Yeah. The next one, the figures of trees on the hill against the setting sun looked like a rocky shoreline. Feedback. The usage of figures is slightly less natural. Eh? Yeah, okay. Is slightly, where am I? The usage of figures is slightly less natural. While figures can mean shapes or outlines, it's more commonly associated with people or animals rather than trees. Using silhouettes or shapes might feel more precise and visually evocative. So it's saying maybe less common to use figures of trees and maybe more common to use silhouettes or shapes. Suggested revision, the silhouettes of trees on the hill against the setting sun looked like a rocky shoreline. It's not wrong, but it's saying maybe less common to use figures instead of silhouettes. The small typo in trees should be, tree instead of, what did I write? I did a typo, but I forget what the typo was. Oh, there's a small typo in trees. It should be,
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Oh, ChatGPT
You
is
can
telling
switch
me
to
I hit the daily limit. I've just had it open since we started. Okay. Let me find what I wrote here. The figures of trees, the hill. No, the problem is not trees. The problem is the figures of trees against or on the hill against the setting sun. I'm missing the word on. Let's see, where am I? It's easy to get lost here. No, it should be on the hill. The silhouettes of trees. So ChatGPT is wrong here in its own correction of me. There's a small typo in trees. There's not a typo in trees. There's a typo in missing a word, which is the word on. I think ChatGPT has made a couple of mistakes today. Oh, it's right here. Under here it says ChatGPT can make mistakes. Oh, okay. So it's not, it's not perfect, but nothing's perfect. It's still, I think, good enough for a lot of stuff. The silhouettes of trees on the hill against the setting sun looked like a rocky shoreline. The sentence paints a vivid scene, but could benefit from words that better capture the contrast and interplay between light and shadow, which is likely the focus here. Figures feel slightly out of place for trees in this poetic context. So it's saying in this specific situation, I think it's not better to use figures, but it's better to use. Because, and if you think about it, that makes sense. A silhouette is just describing the fact that you can't see the detail against something brighter. But a figure is more of a specific shape, like an animal or a person, more often a dinosaur, than something that's a little bit more spread out over a hill, which makes sense. So not wrong, but a little feedback on maybe how common that would be. So that's good. When figure works well, it's most natural when figures works well, it's most natural when describing indistinct shapes, especially those of people, animals, or abstract forms. When alternatives might work well for inanimate objects like trees or natural landscapes. Connotations using figure in this sense often implies some level of mystery, vagueness, or fleeting observation. It's rarely used for sharp, clear shapes. All right, and more examples here. Great. Okay, so this is, again, just a process of play, and it kind of goes back and forth with your second step, which is the process of learning. So learn, play, make sure there's feedback built in somehow. And while ChatGPT may get some things wrong, like not saying the wrong correction or something, it's still going to give you generally good feedback. Then it comes to our next step, which is step 4. So basically here what we're doing is play, making lots of examples, practicing different meanings, quizzes, and understanding quizzes. I'm going to put this on a separate line. Learning connotation, nuances, where does it sound natural? And the example of, maybe you shouldn't use it when you're talking about trees. It may be more natural to use silhouette, right? Where does it sound natural? Where does it sound odd? Right? Feedback, especially from AI tools. But the focus is on making examples. Focus on output, okay? And then we have, and of course, there you should be learning the phrasal verbs, all of the different forms and meanings. Now we have step 4. And step 4 is memorize. And here we have 3 main ways. One, let's say flashcards. And importantly, for flashcards, we want to have some form of spaced repetition. And then 2, we might have consistent, let's say frequent practice and usage. And 3, I think we can say memory palace. So let's talk quickly about memorization. So memorization is now you've discovered a word, you've learned all of the meanings and uses, you've practiced it, you've got feedback. Now you want to prevent it from leaving your mind. You want to prevent it from leaving your memory. So this is where you may want to consider using a flashcard app, Anki, something like that. There are a billion little apps, and you can upload a PDF or something with a bunch of words. And there you're not getting deep practice. That's important to do too. But there you're making it stick. For some reason, the human brain has this thing called a forgetting curve. And if you just remember something once, it'll eventually fade. But if you repeat it at different intervals, more space between each interval each time, for some reason it just starts to stick. It transfers in the mind from short-term memory to long-term memory. And that curve is called the forgetting curve. So here you have this thing called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition. This is usually baked into a vocabulary app. It's going to have an interval of repetition where it shows you this word again quickly, and then it shows you the word again less quickly, and then over time, less and less frequent until you can say that you have learned it or memorized it. Memorization is only useful so that it's in your head when you need it, not useful as a way to say, I know how to use this word. I know how to use it naturally. I know all of the meanings. So that's why we have all of the steps, right? That's why step 2 is so important. So don't think that learning words is only step 4, which is memorization. Step 4 is kind of a by-the-way thing. Just, pop it into a flashcard app and practice it until it sticks. Yeah, you should do that. That's great if that works for you. But don't then think that that's learning the word. Just because you memorized it doesn't mean you can use it naturally. Do step 2 first. Step 2 is hard work, but if you make it more playful, if you work on 5 words at the same time, you can see how much work we're doing with figure. We're talking about one word this whole time, but not every word is like that. This is just a crazy example, and it goes very deep. But also you might say, well, these meanings of figure are so uncommon, I'm not going to focus on these. I'm only going to focus on the top 4 noun forms or noun meanings, the top 4 verb forms, right? And if there's an adjective form as well, I might learn that if it's different or if it's the same. Often the verb and the adjective form will be the same basic meaning, just different forms, right? So it gets natural and it gets easier over time, especially if you make it playful and a back and forth process. Then the memorization part, again, is just to kind of lock that in place. Now, the flashcard thing is super easy. I even made a little flashcard app that allows you to, it's a GPT that allows you to upload the words that you're learning. So you can just sort of click on this and upload the words, or you can paste in a bunch of words. The only thing is I can't bake in the spaced repetition, so it's just repeating them. So I'm not necessarily recommending it. I was just playing around with that. But then you have the memory palace. And the memory palace is a more complex idea. This is where you create associations of the thing you're trying to learn with things you already know by creating a memory object, often using something called a mnemonic, placing it in a particular place in your head, right? A space in your head, and kind of locking it there. Okay, so a simple example. I have a memory palace. It's got words in it too. In my memory palace, I'll just pick one out at random. Well, it's an apartment that I lived in Queens. And I can walk around in that apartment in my head. I can walk around. I'm in the bedroom. I can go into the hallway, bathroom, living room, on the balcony, looking out over the street. That apartment and the street and the whole neighborhood that I lived in Queens is a whole memory palace that contains a bunch of words that I wanted to learn. It's about 2,000 words. And it's just there. It's now an object. It's a place. And when I close my eyes, I'm not joking. when I close my eyes, I can walk around there and things just pop out at me, right? So I'll give you a very simple example. Toward the beginning of it, now it's also very personal. So the process of doing this alleviates the need to do flashcards. You don't have to do flashcards. You just create one object, right? And then it's locked in. It's locked in. So I'm walking around I'm actually not going to share the reasons for my own because it's very personal, often very weird personal stuff. So I see in my memory palace a curtain on the window. And when I look at the curtain, a breeze blows through the window. And the breeze blows out, the curtain blows outward. And I notice that there's an ink stain, a purple ink stain on the curtain. And I can see through the curtain to the outside. Some trees outside, I can see through the curtain to the outside. So it's this light material, and there's this ink stain on the curtain. And immediately in my head comes the word diaphanous. Diaphanous, diaphanous, diaphanous. Now, maybe you can think through why maybe that pops out and maybe why the ink stain is there, right? But there is an association that I've created that has kind of created this object where I have this curtain, and now I remember this word. And this word is sort of a light flowing material. So it's a word to describe something that's a light flowing, maybe slightly transparent, right? Translucent material. So what helps you make the object in your mind is deeply personal. But once you create it, and it's kind of a thing that you can practice, it's very stable. And you generally want to place it in a particular place that lives inside your head, where you went to school, your high school, an old apartment, the house you grew up in, right? You have these places that are kind of locked in. You have to use that. So this curtain is just one of the many places in my particular memory palace for words. Well, let's say for some reason you didn't know the word figure. How would we create a memory object, a loci, a specific thing in our mind that we could basically lock in place in the space in our memory? This is what memory champions use. They do it memorizing a random deck of cards. They're advanced techniques, but the basic idea is you create an object. There's something called the major system, which people use for numbers. There's the person action object system, where you create a person action object for numbers 0 through 99. Anyway, there's a lot of different variations and versions and ways to do it, but let's just keep it simple. Figure. Well, it depends. For me, if I imagine I don't know the word figure and I'm trying to remember it from existing things, I have to think about maybe something that sounds like that I currently know that can help me remember what it means. Well, maybe I know one meaning of figure and I want to remember another. So maybe I remember the meaning of figure of a physical thing sculpted, like a figure of a figurine, like a figure of a polar bear, right? Sculpted out of clay. And I know that meaning. Let's say, just for example, I know that meaning. But I want to remember that figure also refers to shapes and numbers. And so maybe in my mind, the figure, the little figure of a polar bear, is sitting on ice, maybe at the bottom of a sink or something, like an ice rink. And it's sitting on ice skates, and the skates have made an 8. So there's a figure of a polar bear, maybe made of clay. It is sitting on ice skates, sitting on ice, and there's a shape of an 8 carved into the ice with the skates. So now I have this complex object. When I look down in my kitchen sink, there's a little figure of a polar bear there. It's wearing skates, and there's an 8. So that helps me remember that figure is not just maybe a little thing made of clay, shaped out of clay or wood or whatever. But it also represents different shapes, right? The figure of a something. We learned that. And also maybe helps me remember there's numbers, right? A number can be a figure too. So it helps me remember some of the different meanings. Now, if you don't know what a figure is, now, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it just to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until I remember it? Or is there some way to help me remember the sound? Figure. So there you have to play what's called a mnemonic game with yourself. And this is where you might take advantage of your native language. Your native language is maybe going to help you come up with something that sounds like this that can allow you to make a mental connection. Or other words or other sounds that you know. So fig. There are a couple things that come to mind immediately that I can think of in English that makes sense. Fig, maybe I know what a fig is. A fig is maybe a dried fruit, right, that grows on a tree. So I can think of a fig sitting on something, if that helps me. Maybe place a fig on top of the polar bear's head. Fig. And that little clue helps me remember. Fig. Okay, fig. Well, why is there the fig, which I know how to say, why is that sitting on top of a polar bear sculpture, sitting on ice skates, sitting on ice in my sink? So the witnessing this mental object and looking at it makes everything come back. That's why the memory palace thing is so powerful, because you create this object, it's deeply personal or something meaningful and vivid, clear, weird, strange, bizarre, shocking. And when you look at it, then suddenly you ask yourself, well, why is he wearing a thing on his head? Why does he have a fig? Figure. Okay, so you don't have to place the whole thing, the sound of the whole thing there. It just has to be a little clue or a little hint. And that's just a simple example. Maybe you think that maybe you feel like the word figure sounds something like finger. So maybe finger. Maybe you say finger in the shape of a 1. And when you hold up your finger, maybe a thing grows out of your finger that makes it look like a 1 or a 7, or something happens to your finger. You visualize something weird happening to your finger. And then it sounds like finger. So maybe that's close enough. The sound of that is close enough to remind you. It just has to be good enough for you for it to trigger the word, right? So the diaphanous thing. The fact that it's a purple spot on the curtain, that's it. Dye. It's got some dye on it. Dye is a thing that changes the color of fabric. This thing is blowing in the wind. So that's all I need. I don't need the diaphanous, that part. I just need the dye part to remember that particular word. So this is the idea. You put in that work, and if you do it once, then it's just locked in there. Then every time you go to that place in your mind and look at the thing, you see the polar bear with the little thing on his head, or you see your finger doing something, and it just, boom, it pops into your mind. It takes practice, but it's more fun, and it's an interesting way to remember a lot of information. Words, numbers, you can remember all kinds of things. And the final stage, step 5. Step 5 is very simple. Step 5 of learning a word is to simply use it in your real life. That's it. Use it in your real life. So practice it, not as practice, but in a conversation. You see an opportunity to use it? Use it. See an opportunity to use it in your email? You know when it's natural, when it's awkward, when it's, when to use it. Not just what it means, but all of the meanings now, because you put the time in, you put the work in, right? You know how it's naturally used. You know the connotations. You got feedback. You did quizzes. You have no problem remembering it. You've been through all of the 4 steps. Now, try to use it in your daily life. Don't force it, but whenever you see an opportunity, that is the right word to use at that time, right? How many times do you think I get to say diaphanous? Basically never. But I think that word is relevant to me, and I might want to use it sometimes, and so I decided to learn it, right? I kept hearing it and reading it in different places and thought, okay, well, I should just remember it. So I put it in there, right? So remember, we learn words generally so that we can do something with them. So for I forgot to put a 5 here. For step 5, very simple, just start using it. All the steps. Step 1, we discover in context. Remember the context, natural discovery in our own lives. Step 2, we understand the word. We spend the most time here learning the meanings, learning the context, learning different context, connotations, different uses, what's natural and what's unnatural. That's probably was bothering some people for a while. Understand the word fully. Then we get feedback based on examples we create, right? Repeat, 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 get feedback. Is this natural? Is it better to use this word or that word, a silhouette or figure, right? We do quizzes maybe to really get a feeling for it. I'm not a big fan of quizzes, but you can. Then we memorize it. Remember the word, lock it in place. Do Anki, spaced repetition, memory palace, whatever works for you. And finally, just use the word. Just use the word naturally. Okay? Okay. Yuan Yuan, hello. Good to see you. Do we know? Do I know? Do I know you? It's been a while. Maybe? I don't know. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I know we've just been talking about one word this whole time, but hopefully it's now clear what the steps are and how to go through the steps and how to really learn words. It sounds like a lot. Not every word is as deep and rich as the word figure, but I hope I can at least get you to think about learning language as play and a process of exploration. I mean, today we were just playing around, right? It's all play, right? You give yourself permission to play and explore and dig and have fun and, use tools like ChatGPT, take advantage of those tools, but also do what works for you. Don't assume that everything works for everybody, right? If something doesn't work for you, then if the memory palace thing doesn't work at all, then don't do it. Use something else, spaced repetition or whatever. All right? So thank you all for joining. I hope you have a fantastic week. Good luck as you continue your English learning journey. If you don't mind, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button and subscribe. That's a great way to support the channel. Grab a free course in the links in the description. Free course. Join the Discord. Check out new courses, especially over on Udemy. Black Friday is coming up, and I will see you in the next one.